Was nice. Thank you, Kamal. Thank you, Cecilia, for this. This has been an extraordinary adventure.
Ben, bienvenue.
Merci.
On doit faire ça en français, non?
OK, comme vous voulez.
I humiliated myself by attempting French in front of Jodie Foster to point out that her most recent film, Vie Privée, which is still in distribution, please go check it out, is, of course, all in French, and points to another one of your talents. It is a little astonishing how multilingualism in the United States is such a special thing, but congratulations. It's an incredible
Thank you. Thank you.
I will also take that opportunity as a stage setter to point out that Night Country, Naiad, and an amazing short doc called Alok by the incredible Alex Hedison, which you EP'd. These were all written and directed by women.
Yes, yes, that's true. And Vie Privée, too.
Exactly. So to Sandra's point, here's an artist who's doing it, right? Leveraging her power to get things done in the way that we would all aspire to have done.
I will have to interrupt you and say for the first 45, maybe 50 years of my career, I never worked with a woman director. I worked with one woman director. And of course, I had to look back and say, how did that happen? How was that possible? But I also started working in 1966. And I never saw another woman. Sometimes the lady who played my mom, or sometimes a makeup artist, or a script supervisor, but that was it. I was surrounded by fathers and brothers who taught me everything and who loved me, and I was their prodigal daughter. And to my total shame, it just never occurred to me that that wasn't the way it was, that I would just always be the only woman. And it took that many years for me to turn around and say, oh, wait a minute, women can be directors too?
Yeah. Well, I think that might be because there was no Jodie Foster at that moment to leverage her power. There were, historically, yes. Right? Ida Lupino was an example of a woman director who was also an actor who leveraged her power at that moment.
And film pioneers, the beginning film pioneers, of course, in the 1900s.
Yeah. That power was taken away at a certain point for whatever reason. But
yes.
Let's get to that, but I wanted to just start by introducing the folks, as Ava started, a little bit more to our art form, right? And I'll call it ours since I get to play in the sandbox with you incredible artists. But just to talk a little bit about filmmaking and what goes into that. In preparation for this conversation, we had a great call. And in describing the execution of our art, of film, you described it as a type of choreography. Where intention can meet action, can meet spontaneity. You talk a little bit about that choreography and dance?
Yeah, I guess it's a good analogy. That we are juggling these two things. I think all artists do. The intention, your preparedness, what you want to say, the colors you've chosen, the sounds you've chosen, the parts of you that you want to communicate and that you're aware of, the consciousness that you're aware of. And you gather that together and hopefully communicate that to 175 people on a crew. Certainly, as a leader, you're the person who is there to, not just delegate, but to inspire and to be the parent, the good parent, to tell them when the train is leaving the station, when it will arrive, and how awesome they are for getting there any way they can. So that's your job, is to have intention. But at some point, someone says action, and you just have being, and you just have a moment. So I guess the analogy is, in a beautiful dance, you have the choreography, you have the intention, and then you have the dance. In music, you have the score, of course, the ideas that are presented to you, and the movement forward, the momentum, a sense of history and a sense of future of where you're headed, and then you have the moment. And we're always balancing those two things to, never forget that we're playing to a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, perhaps, sometimes not. But that in the moment, you must forget your intentions and allow them to resurface and allow them to be embodied.
You also talked about, and I think it's an essential part of cinema and filmmaking for me, but has been lost in recent generations and certainly in film studies, is the notion of collaboration, right? Yeah. That it's inherently collaborative. The auteur theory kind of disrupted that a bit. We can talk about the French in that context if you want,
Yes.
a little bit. But the idea that one great man, in most cases in auteur theory, is the one who creates the work, kind of really masks and obliterates in many cases the true nature of filmmaking, which is collaborative.
I think we're all torn about that, right? Because we have the experience of having both things, of being leaders, understanding what leadership means, re-identifying what a leader is, especially a female leader. What does that look like, and how do we work with people? And having worked in the hierarchy system, the hierarchy works really well when you have one person who's making a final decision and everyone else who's being communicated to who understands that and keeps offering of themselves, as Ava was saying. You have 175 people who say, my mom said this, my husband says this, and I once put a lampshade on my head. All of those experiences come into the room, and it is the director's job as a good parent to say, I hear you, I love you, tell me more about that. Maybe not that, but tell me more about this other direction. And to sort of guide the process like a great border collie that's able to, bring all of these people together so that you create a separate body. You're creating a being, actually. You're creating an organic being that's born of 175 people, that walks the way it walks and talks the way it talks, that you don't 100% understand until the cutting room days are over and you walk into the screening and go, oh my God, that's the child I built. So it is at once, we do respect the hierarchy of a director, of a vision, and yet Americans, and this is going to surprise all of you, we're very good at collaborating. And I'm always surprised at that when I go make a film overseas. I just made a film in France, and I suddenly am forced to remember, like, oh no, we actually make decisions together in America. It isn't just one person whose, not just idea for the film, but whose ego matters the most. And that is a very European idea, that it doesn't matter whether the movie's better or whether the movie gets to the end product that you're hoping for. What really matters is that this very fragile ego of a director is preserved intact. And I've worked in all different ways with all different kinds of directors. We talked about that a little bit. You are a family member, and you learn to, because you respect the process, you learn to say, this director likes his birthday party to be like this. This director likes it to be quiet on the set. This director likes no color. To serve, you are serving someone, but you are serving them the best of you, and you hope to be respected and listened to.
You mentioned that as director, every decision is yours, including dealing with the surprises. And you mentioned parenting. You're also a parent. Talk about the surprises that arrive on set, for example, as a director, where ultimately it's up to you.
Well, there's the bad surprises, like weather,
Yeah.
or actors are always sometimes a really bad surprise because you never know what they're going to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. But there are the good surprises. Hopefully, it's nothing but good surprises, because you've created an organism that's separate from you, and who tells you what it wants to tell you. That's why I love working with children. I love working with child actors. Maybe take one, they want to throw the spaghetti, but take two, they're like, I'm not throwing the spaghetti. I'm not feeling it. You can't make me. And if I throw it, it's going to look fake. And there's a real beauty to that. I think that when your goal is truth, most authentic, and in my philosophy, that's how I work, which is, is it true? Is it false? Is it true? Is it false? It's like at that binary computer system. I just keep picking the true one. Would the Martian wear green or would the Martian wear red? Oh, green for sure, because his parents, had images of trees in their eyes, and so he's drawn to green. But in the hopes of following that path of truth, you get all these surprises from the people in front of you. An actor who says, that doesn't feel right, really. And instead of saying, yes, it does, damn it, do it. You have to interrogate and be curious and say, really, well, I wonder why that is. What if you said nothing? What if he said everything? What would your reaction to be? To continually asking the what if questions that allows a truth to bubble up that has nothing to do with you. And I think that's the difficult part of the directorial process, say the auteur filmmaker, is, the real auteur filmmaker says, every decision is mine because I'm here to support the surprises and the unknown. And I can't take credit for that. I don't know where that comes from. That comes from the earth.
One of the things you talked about when we spoke before that really surprised me, talk about surprises, was how disappointing it has been to direct yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Which you have done several times to our delight, right? Like The Beaver, Little Man Tate. Talk to us about directing Jodie Foster, and why is that disappointing? How could it possibly be?
It's very disappointing. Well, you just get the ideas that you came into the room with, and that's it. And you don't get the surprises. So I think you don't get the best performances out of yourself. You don't get the surprise from yourself. You just get something that you planned. And if there's a real beauty in cinema, it's that, that continual unplanned happening. So yeah, I prefer not to direct myself if I can help it, unless I can't get financing, and then you might find me there.
So I feel like
I talk fast.
No, you talk. I mean, obviously, it's so stimulating. I promise not to interrupt her, but every time you speak, like a new idea bubbles up. But I do want to talk about the thing that I'm very conscious of. I'm glad Kamal mentioned. By the way, we'll trade places anytime. If I can play with your collection, you can come and watch bad movies, which is what actually I do most of the time, because most of them are not great. But that topic is men, right? I'm very conscious that Christoph and I are, I think, the only boys on this stage. We're the lucky, very, very privileged ones. Thank you. But you have had amazing relationships professionally with men. And let's talk about professional relationships. And you mentioned that you have been shaped by the fathers and brothers that you've worked with in the business. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, I've been shaped by their privilege that, for whatever reason, they decided to bestow on me because I was the daughter they never had, or I was the person they worked with that was really dependable. So in some ways, I was given some keys to the kingdom that a lot of women who came before me and after me didn't have access to, because they weren't known quantities, they were risks. And I think that's a really interesting conversation to have about how, if we ever cared about talking about the industry, which sometimes I find incredibly boring, this idea of risk and how 50% of the population became a risk. Including the fact that we are 50% of the consumers of cinema as well. That somehow our stories are a risk, that every man that was ever born came from us, and their ideas about love, their ideas about connection, about language, about safety, came from, most notably, from women. And yet we're seen as a risk. And so that was an education that I had to, and every woman here and anywhere has had to painstakingly do as part of our job of wanting to be inside the institution, is to say, let me educate you. For example, this is always an interesting example. If I read, at least in the past, certainly in the last, maybe not in the last 10 years, but certainly before that, pretty much every single script that I would read, really every single one, I would say maybe 80% of the scripts that I would read, if you would say, what was the motivation for the female character? Most of these scripts are written by men. The motivation for the female character was either that she had been raped or that she had incest. Because the male writers really wanted her to have something impactful happen, and they couldn't think of anything else. They just couldn't think of anything else that would motivate a woman to be greedy, rageful, sad, embarrassed, any number of emotions. They could only think of one thing that was so awful in their mind or in their taboos that would actually potentially change a woman's personality or serve as motivation. And I'm not mad at them. I feel sorry for them. And we have to go through that process of educating men in the workplace as leaders in a way that is loving. And that's principled because we want them. We want them to be a part of us. We want them to be our sons. We want them to grow up to be great dads and fathers and to be good actors. And so, yeah, that's part of our job, is educating a whole generation of men that weren't taught that women were human beings.
You know, it's been fascinating for me. I came into MoMA 19 years ago at a very peak auteur moment, right? Like that was the zeitgeist of film studies, and perhaps still is. My first show, big show, was for Mike Nichols, who had never gotten a museum show or a retrospective, basically, at a major institution. And I think one of the reasons was he was a great collaborator, right?
That's right.
Notably with women, right? With Elaine May, Nora Ephron, you know, you go down the list, and then his actors, obviously. And I think there is an opportunity, perhaps, for directors and actors such as yourself to help educate up-and-coming, obviously, women, but also men on how to be great collaborative filmmakers.
Yes, humans really, you know, but it's the work of our lives, the work of every actor, of course, but honestly, the work of every artist, and is to know yourself and then be able to translate that knowledge of yourself and to be curious about other people to help them deepen. I mean, you know, we're talking about reading. And I went to a great school, and I was a literature major, and most of what I did was African studies and Afro-American studies and oral narrative, and you know, lots of you know, Derrida and all that stuff that I can't even remember now. But what I learned to do was to read. And I read every day. Reading doesn't just mean reading a book. It doesn't just mean reading a painting. It means reading people, reading circumstances, and committing that legibility of the other, and you know, putting it inside of you, and then being able to see the world differently through those eyes because you have included that point of view. Did I go off topic and now I can't remember where I was? Oops, I do that.
It's about finding humanity. It's about
finding your
place
I mean,
as an
and so reading. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, that's all we do as actors. It's all we do as directors. Is we make choices of what feels true. Which I was saying before. You know, the binary test of is it true or is it false? So, you know, as a director, when somebody says, you know, do you feel like this scene is it long lensy? Is it, you know, a Caravaggio kind of painting and wide format? You have to start talking about the character, whether it's a good guy or a bad guy. The bad guy has an equally interesting and fascinating, complex point of view. Is to explore complexity and explore nuance in order to ask the question of, is it true or is it not? You know, would that green coat be true or is the blue coat more true? So every choice that you make is really just about deepening into reading.
So let's move to the kind of action point part of the conversation, because I think that was part of the mandate for this conversation was...
the action.
Yes. What
Positivity.
should we be doing? So clear. I mean, we started this conversation by pointing out that you have used your power, your agency within the industry to work with people that you know, clearly have benefited from your support.
Yeah.
But and you mentioned that you, because of your relationships with a lot of men in the industry, were seen as less of a risk. But in some cases, it's simply a case that the industry forgets that women exist.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think that the fact that there were no women directors in mainstream Hollywood, really very, very, very few up until recently, I don't think that it was a cabal of intention. I don't think they all sat in a room together with twirling their mustaches saying, how can we oppress women and make sure they have no place at the table? I think they forgot. I think they just forgot to think about us, or they forgot to inhabit us because they weren't taught to. Very often male directors, and there are lots of examples of people that I don't think that's true, but doesn't necessarily come naturally to them to inhabit a character and to get inside their body and then turn around and look and say, what do I see? What do I feel? They just didn't get taught that as kids, or I don't know, maybe specially it wasn't important for them for their survival. But it's something that they need to learn. And there are many directors that have. Jonathan Demme, for example, is one of them. And I always cite him as my favorite feminist director. But that honestly, it's a gift that we were given. And you must use the gifts that you were given, not the ones you wished you had, but the ones you were given, to be able to create fully. In terms of making great changes, I'm a girl, so I'm going to be really ashamed that I didn't make more, that I couldn't do better. There's a moment in Wendy Wasserstein's Heidi Chronicles where she talks about she's a museum person and she's got the slide in front of her and they say, so tell us, where are we going? Women, where are we going? And that is her topic. And she says, I don't know where we're going. And I think that's really important to say that and to be able to not have to try to know. We don't know where we're going and we've not done enough. I always feel that way, that I've not done enough. And so maybe that's positive. Maybe that helps me move forward to say, what is the next step of that? And now that I'm in my 60s, I think there are new steps that I never saw coming that now I get to have with a certain amount of privilege to be able to say, what voices haven't I heard? And how can I be the way those fathers and brothers were to me? How can I open up the room and say, tell me your story. Tell me what I don't know. And let me help you with whatever bone wisdom I have. Let me help you be centered the way I was allowed to be centered.
So a spontaneous case study that I just made up in my curatorial brain, although I have thought about it over and over again, and now I get to ask you. You mentioned Jonathan Demme, but you, I think, mentioned David Fincher as someone you love working with. So Panic Room, incredible film.
Thank you.
There's you and a young woman named Kristen Stewart in a Panic Room.
Yeah, she turned 11.
On set?
She did. I gave her birthday party. We had a mariachi band and a piñata.
Well, it worked. She loves you. She has told me that. She is obviously someone who's forged an incredible career as an actor. And her directorial debut, feature debut, she's had shorts, is just an astonishing cri de coeur. I mean, it's just all her. I loved it. And I think it's impossible for me to separate the fact that she was trapped in a room with Jodie Foster by David Fincher and has been inspired now to do exactly what you've just described, which is be motivated by the adjacency to you.
Right. Talking about Kristen is a perfect example. Is her film The Chronicle of Water? Chronology of Water. Chronology of Water, an extremely brave, very difficult film. Very difficult, and I think that she would, I say that proudly, I think that she would agree with that. It's a very difficult film, and it asks a lot, and it asks for us to really interrogate shame in a way that's incredibly uncomfortable. And so when we're talking about, the shame that some of us carry about why couldn't we do more, there is a part of us that has to accept that. Me, for example, at 63, a white lady at 63, it's not my time. It was my time, but it's not my time anymore. And the acceptance of that is also like accepting that, my knees don't work the way they used to, or, I can't tweeze my eyebrows anymore without I'm not able to do it as well. There's an acceptance that I saw the top of the mountain and tried to get there, and I never quite got there, but there's all these other people that have a whole new point of view, and they have all the strength that I didn't have. I was born in 1962 of a mom who said, you're never going to be able to take care of yourself financially, or so who's going to take care of you? Or, I'd go to a meeting or something, and she'd say, what did you wear? Or, all of those. All of that, the baggage, and I loved her, and she gave me so much, but she was only capable of giving me so much in the same way that I was only capable of doing so much. and this next generation of women and men who come from us, my sons, for example, have the opportunity to be able to look into the past that oppressed us and be able to go, you did what? What? That happened? And that's really moving for me. So it's really moving to see somebody like Kristen, who I remember her being, just turning 11 years old. And I was pregnant at the time of making that film. And I didn't, did I know? Yeah, I probably knew I was having a boy and not a girl. But I remember looking at her and thinking, God, if I had a kid, if I had a girl, I'd want her to be just like her. And, Kristen has a point of view I could never have. I was just born from a different time.
I do want to ask what institutions and foundations can do. I mean, Ava mentioned, her recent film Origin was produced by philanthropic organizations, but
Right.
you've got an audience of people who can
Okay.
follow your word. So what would the word be if you had some advice?
I don't know about the industry because I'm just an actor, and and even as a director, I don't do what I do as a director. That would be a terrible mistake. But there is something, when we talk about hitting a certain age, I think has been the real revelation. Is I thought that, oh God, I'm going to turn 60 and then I'm just going to be dead and it's going to be awful. There's going to be nothing left. And what I found is that I'm happier in my work than I've ever been, because there was a certain level of got to do that, want to be part of the system, want to be at the table, a kind of ambition, because of everything that had been denied to me. There was a kind of desperation that I had in my 20s and 30s that I hit 60. I don't know. I think it might be a hormone. Suddenly one day I turned 60 and I was like, I don't give a fuck. And I don't know how that happened. It feels like it happened overnight. It does feel like it's a chemical thing, but there's a usefulness to being able to finally examine your life and to be authentically who you are in that moment without the need to perform milestones for people. And I think there's a relaxation that comes from that. So if there's any wisdom that I give to people who are actors, for example, or artists who are coming up, it's the dumbest bit of wisdom, which is I'm usually the guy who says, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Because what I've found is the biggest obstacle to creativity, the biggest obstacle to doing your best work is worrying. It got in my way, and as an actor, it's obvious. If you have somebody in front of you and you're trying to do something, and you can see the fear in their eyes, you know that fear is contaminating, and you must stop that fear immediately. So you learn to shake them up and go, hey, how about those Mets? Here, look what I can do with my fingers. You learn to distract them out of fear, because if they get scared, you're going to get scared. And suddenly you're going to realize, oh my God, I'm speaking in an accent and there's 175 people and I'm pretending I love that guy. So there's a self-consciousness that is not helpful to you. And every Buddhist in the world can tell you that you must get out of your mind and you must relax. And so that's really the only wisdom that I bring to the equation for everybody, true of perhaps museum directors as well, is that this idea, this question of legacy, of continually saying, what is my legacy? What am I going to do? That kind of selfishness of that task, even for an institution, and let's face it, the institutions that used to decide about art were churches. They decided what was godly, what was powerful, what was meaningful, was how they wanted things to be presented in terms of man's stature. And then what'd you get? Then after that, you got J.P. Morgan, and you got, Paul Mellon, and you got the Guggenheims. You got all the people who said, well, we're rich, and we want to decide what's worthy. And now you have a version of that that's really, really surprising. So it's a kind of, it's really surprising that's grown from that. That's grown from that, art, creative domination. I see 000.
Yeah. There's no.
Sorry.
There's no 000.
So if there is one thing that I can say to, corporate executives or to anybody, is that if you really want to make lasting work that is deep and relevant, it's not about aggrandizing yourself and about your ego and being the best. It is about relaxing and allowing something to appear and saying, hey, I recognize that. That's truthful. But if you cannot relax, you won't see it. It'll pass you by. The opportunity for surprise. I think Iñárritu has this story when he accepted an award. I was there. He accepted an award, and he said, it's really weird accepting this award because it feels like I made love to my wife, and she got pregnant, and there we were, and we were super excited because we were gonna have a baby, and we did all this stuff, and then the baby came, and then the baby's like amazing, and this baby's doing all this stuff, and then all the people are congratulating me on the baby. It's like I had nothing to do with the baby. I just made love to my wife because I love her. And that really is what art can be. I really believe in that, and maybe I'm incredibly naive, but I really believe that the only line to follow is to follow the line of love, and do not trust anything else. And if you are in a position of power, and at least you can know that you died trying.
Mais merci, Jodie Foster. Thank you, Jodie. Incredible.
Cheers.